Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So today's video is actually going to be a video that I'm going to be uploading in about 4 weeks time, and that is my yearly wrap up of all the books that I have read during 2022. The reason I'm filming this so prematurely is because I'm away over Christmas, and between Christmas and New Year's I have a really hectic week, and so I just won't have the time to film it. But what I will do is, if I do read any books between now and the end of the year, which will probably happen, I'll probably read another 2 more books, I want to say, then I will upload those on my Instagram account so you guys can go see that, which is _books with Luce, which I will leave a link to in the description box down below. But as you guys know, I always do sort of either like a monthly wrap up, or book by book I will do a review for all the books that I have read, and so I just thought I would film a YouTube video and just kind of have it all in one place, so you can see all of the books that I have read. Some of the books I no longer have a physical copy of, reason being I either have them stored away, or I have gotten rid of them, or I just for some reason have misplaced them. But I have my entire Goodreads list up on my laptop, so I will be able to go through all of the books that I have read this year. So in total, so far, I have read 38 books out of the 30 books that I wanted to read. So my reading goal for this year was 30 books. It's the first year that I'm actually involving myself with the Goodreads challenge, and I've had so much fun reading all the books and also going along with some of the friends that I am on Goodreads with and just seeing how many books they have read. But yeah, so we're gonna jump right in because I have a feeling this could be quite a long video. So grab yourselves a cup of tea, grab yourself something to eat, and I hope you enjoy this video. And if you do, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and don't forget to turn on the little post notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. And with that said, let's just jump straight into the video. So I'm going to do this in the way that Goodreads has set it out on my list, so I can give you the rating and the tiny synopsis that I will say about the book. As mentioned in the intro, I don't have the physical copy of some books, but I will insert like a little picture of them over here. So first things first is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I was really excited to read this book actually, and then I really took quite a while to finish it. I just found it was really quite boring. It just didn't really give anything to me. So The Silent Patient is actually about a woman called Alyssa. I never knew how to pronounce her name. I called her Alicia or Alicia Berenson, and she lived a seemingly perfect life until one day 6 years ago when she shot her husband in the head 5 times. Since then she hasn't spoken a single word, and it's time to find out why. So this is very much a therapist slash thriller slash murder mystery book. One thing that I will give it is that the plot twist was absolutely incredible, and that's the one thing that I actually enjoyed about the book. The rest of the story I felt quite boring, and it just didn't really do anything for me. I'm a murder mystery geek, and so I'm very particular about my murder mystery books, and for this I rated this, I think I originally rated it 3 stars, and then I thought about it some more, and then I rated it 2, and I've actually gone down to 1 star, and I've completely gotten rid of the book, purely because I know that I won't ever reread it again. If I have a book, once I've read a book and I know for a fact I won't reread it, then I will get rid of it. And if for whatever reason I did want to reread it, then I would probably just get like an ebook of it or something like that. I know it's probably going to be a really unpopular opinion because it's been so popular on Bookstagram and TikTok. There is The Maidens that I would like to read by Alex Michaelides. Maybe it was just his writing style I couldn't really get into, or maybe it was just genuinely that character. I'm not the biggest fan of kind of like therapist inspired books, so maybe that was the reason why I didn't enjoy it as much. My next book is Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. I went full out on the Agatha Christie books this year, and I'm actually really excited to announce that I'm going to be taking part in the Agatha Christie reading challenge for next year, and I'm so excited for it. I'm just awaiting a copy of the reading list so I can go ahead and buy all the books that I need to buy. So Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile. So a cruise down the Nile on a river steamer sounds like the perfect way to get away from it all, but the tranquil darkness of an Egyptian evening can change fast when the air is thick with hot passions and cold malice. Temperatures rise when the first passenger is shot. Poirot must abandon the mysteries of ancient Egypt and focus on altogether deadlier matters. I rated this book 3 stars. My first reason for it was that I think it just was a really long-winded way of going about the story. So the murder didn't actually happen until about halfway through the book. Now I'm not gonna do any spoilers in this video, just because obviously if you would like to read the book then I don't want to spoil it for you, but I do have a more detailed review on my Instagram and on my Goodreads, which I will link down below. But yeah, so the murder didn't really happen halfway through, and I really like the setting of it, and obviously it's Agatha Christie, so no matter what I will enjoy the book. Obviously I really enjoy her writing style because I have read multiple of her books. There was just something about it that I didn't click with as much as some of her other novels, but I would definitely say pick it up. I think I read it purely because the movie was coming out, and I haven't even finished watching the new movie that's come out. I was watching it because there were some really good actors in it, and obviously they did a Murder on the Orient Express version and with Johnny Depp, and the way that the Murder on the Orient Express and the Death on the Nile movies work is that the Murder on the Orient Express actually follows through to the Death on the Nile, whereas obviously in these books they are standalone, they're not actually a series. But overall I did enjoy it. 3 stars for me is something that I did enjoy. I enjoyed the kind of characters, the sort of plot. It just wasn't gripping enough for me to sit there and read like constantly. It took me quite a while to get through this book. It's also a bit of a hefty book, so yeah, I kind of, there was just that one thing that didn't click with me, and for that reason I did rate it 3 stars. However, I love Poirot. I did like the murders. I liked the way that it worked out. I definitely did keep guessing until the very end, and it is very much the very end that you find out what actually happened, and it is very clever on how they sort of did it. Yeah, so 3 stars for this one. Next up is actually one of my recent reads that I read maybe a week ago, a couple weeks ago now. And that is Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. This is actually the version that is probably the best translated version, I want to say. This was edited by her father, Otto Frank, and so it's actually got bits that, you know, it's a true sort of translation of the diary. So obviously I think everybody has heard of Anne Frank and her story. When I was about 12 years old, so when I was in year 7, I went to Holland for a end of year school trip, and one of the days we were there we went to go visit the Anne Frank Museum, and you know, at 12 years old you never really appreciated the story and, you know, the true trials and tribulations that Anne Frank had to, you know, go through. And she was the age that I was when I went to visit the museum, and so reading it now as a 20-year-old, it was so unbelievably eye-opening, and I just think it's a story that everybody should read. This is obviously a very different type of genre. This is, you know, a real life story, and you know, this is her diary. This is the one thing that kept her going throughout her time in the annex, and the thought that they were so close of getting out and, you know, freedom, and then, you know, it was a matter of like, I think a couple of months before the war had ended, and it was just, you know, sort of the release of the camps and everything, and it was just, I bawled my eyes out at the end of this story. There is another author that I read called Heather Morris, and she wrote The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and those are my absolute favourite books in the entire world. Not for the reason that, you know, it's more the way that they were written and the story behind it, and for me it's such an eye-opening thing. And I love reading historical fiction. I think it's really, really important, but I'd also say be at an age where you actually can appreciate it, because as I said, I sort of, like, I knew her story, I've always known her story, but I've never really understood or appreciated the story, and so reading it as an older person, it makes it, you know, a lot better. I rated this book 5 stars. You know, I couldn't not rate it 5 stars. If you're reading it, obviously as a reader, it's definitely very like monotonous, and you know, it's very quite dull and boring at times, and I think I struggled as the perspective of a reader. I definitely struggled in that sense, but then you've got to remember that, you know, this is her diary and this is kind of, you know, real life facts. But it does mention that Otto actually left out some passages because of how, like, in detail she wrote about things, specifically relationships in the annex, and kind of, you know, she's a growing girl and things that kind of, you know, kind of puberty and all that sort of stuff. So I think there are some passages that have been left out, but I think what's really quite special is that I've seen the physical copy of her diary, like I've seen her actual diary that she wrote in, and you know, where she wrote this diary, and so I think for that it's really, really quite special to me. But yeah, so this was a 5-star read for me. Next up is Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. I love these two characters. These are probably one of my absolute favourite characters out of all the books in the entire world. I just love Nick and Charlie's story. I've also, which we'll see later on, I've also read all the Heartstopper books, and so I just had to kind of pick up the extra little Nick and Charlie book. So this is 2 years later from the volume 4 graphic novel. Everyone that knows that Nick and Charlie are the perfect couple, that they're inseparable, but now Nick is leaving for university and Charlie will be left behind at 6th form. As the time to say goodbye draws closer, both boys begin to question, is their love strong enough to survive being apart? After all, first loves rarely last forever. So it's a really sweet, quick read. I read this in like a day, but you know, as Alice Oseman, in her very special way, she has the most gorgeous kind of, you know, drawings and stuff, and it's just adorable and I love it. I rated this 3 stars. Still really enjoyed it, and it's definitely a book to read after you've read the Heartstopper series. This next book, Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Now, I was actually very, very disappointed with this book. It's obviously one of the most hyped books on TikTok and Instagram. I think any kind of Colleen Hoover book is. However, I didn't enjoy it. It just waffled. There was no real like plot. I found that it didn't make me emotional. Usually her books kind of do. Maybe I just don't really vibe with Colleen Hoover, although I read 4 of her books this year. I just think that her style of writing, it's definitely an easy style of writing. Like you can get through her books pretty quickly. However, I just find that this book just didn't do anything for me. If you're unaware or unfamiliar with Ugly Love, it's not exactly love at first sight for Tate Collins when she meets the tormented and secretive Miles Archer. They wouldn't even go so far as to consider themselves friends. The only thing Tate and Miles have in common is a mutual physical attraction that can't be denied. Once their desires are out in the open, they realise they might have stumbled on the perfect no-strings arrangement. He isn't looking for love and she doesn't have time for it, so that leaves just the sex. What they've got could be surprisingly satisfying as long as Tate can stick to the 2 rules Miles has for her. Never ask about the past and don't expect a future. They think they can handle it, but everything is different when real emotions start to change the equation. Hearts get infiltrated, promises get broken, rules get shattered, love gets ugly. I'd definitely say it's kind of just full of smut, really. I know Colleen Hoover writes a lot of spicy, smutty books. However, this was just too much for me. I didn't enjoy it. I rated it 2 stars. It just didn't do anything for me, unfortunately. So I wouldn't, in my perspective, I wouldn't really recommend this book. It is Colleen Hoover. I have quite a lot of Colleen Hoover books, but I will probably say of all the ones I've read, this is my least favourite so far. Next up is The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse. I read this. When did I read this? I can't remember what month I read this in. I think it was around the middle of the year as well, and I freaking love this book. It is one of my favourite books of 2022. So I originally rated it 4 stars, I think, just because when I finish a book, I need to like almost evaluate it, and it takes me quite a while to evaluate a book. Basically, I will rate a book 5 stars. So I will rate all of my books 4 stars until I've evaluated them, and then I will, if I keep thinking about them constantly, like every day, every time I look at that book, I will think about it and I'll remember exactly what's happened, and the characters have been gripping, the story has been gripping, then I will rate it 5 stars. And it goes the same, like if I look at a book and it doesn't really give me anything, then I will rate the books, you know, lower stars depending on how I feel. So before this book, I had no idea who the lovely Sarah Pearse was, and I am so unbelievably grateful that I have stumbled upon her work, because she is an incredible writer and I absolutely love her books. She's also released The Retreat, which came out this year, and I read that within 2 days. I read it, or like 24 hours I read it, and it was just the most incredible book ever. However, this is still my favourite. So this is set in the Swiss Alps in a sanatorium, an old sanatorium, which has been converted into a hotel. A beautiful eerie hotel in the Swiss Alps, recently converted from an abandoned sanatorium, is the last place Detective Ellen Warner wants to be, but her estranged brother has invited her there for his engagement party, and she feels she has no choice but to accept. Arriving in the midst of a threatening storm, Ellen immediately feels on edge, and things only get worse when they wake the next morning to find her brother's fiancée is missing. With access to the hotel cut off, the guests begin to panic. But this is only the first disappearance. Everyone's in danger and anyone could be next. This had me guessing until the very end, and I freaking love this book. Once again, I think I devoured this in about 2 days, which is very quick for me. But I just loved the scenery. The description of the scenery was impeccable. Piers just, I don't know what it is about her writing, but she just makes everything so unbelievably like realistic in a way. That's all I could think of. For like days, I literally couldn't pick up a book after it for a couple of days at least, because it was just this good. And I urge every single one of you who's watching this video to read this book, and please do it, because I am just obsessed with her. She's also the loveliest person. She always interacts with my Instagram posts, which, you know, as a content creator, as a small content creator who does Bookstagram for the sake of loving books and just joining a community that is so wholesome, and to get messages back from your favourite authors is just, I feel starstruck after it. But yeah, I absolutely love this book. This was a 5-star book for me. I wish I could rate it more than 5 stars. If I would, I'd rate it about 1,000, because it's just that good. So everybody who's watching this, if you take any book away from this video, please read this, because it's incredible. Next up, we have Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Once again, this is my favourite book of all time. If anybody ever asks me what my favourite book is, this will be my immediate answer. But also the fact that I own 2 beautiful copies of this book. I own a special edition one, which I actually uploaded in my recent book haul, and I also, so I have that in hardback, and then I have the paperback version, which is just as gorgeous. So I actually read this at the beginning of the year when it was winter, and I feel like this is going to be tradition every year for me to read a book that is like it's gonna be a tradition for me every year to read this book, because it's just that perfect wintry scenery. You know, they get stuck on a train because of a snowdrift, and oh, it's just impeccable. I feel like everybody and their mother knows about this book and has read this book, so I'm not going to go too much into it because it is just incredible. But I obviously did rate it 5 stars. This next book, when I tell you, this was actually, okay, thing is, I'm going to say this about every single one of my books that I've rated 5 stars. However, this was the first sort of book that I read that was like TikTok and Bookstagram related. It holds a very special place in my heart because this book really kicked off my kind of reading obsession. It's just that book that I absolutely love. I don't stop talking about it. Anytime someone asks me for a book recommendation, I will say this book, purely because of how amazing it is. And I think everybody who knows this book and who's read this book and who's enjoyed this book will probably say the same thing. And it's also the first book that I read by this author, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it is an amazing book. It's so incredibly written, it's so incredibly empowering, and the characters are impeccable, and I just love this book. So if you are unaware of The Seven Husbands, reclusive Hollywood icon Evelyn Hugo is finally ready to tell the truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. But when she chooses unknown magazine reporter Monique Grant to write her story, no one is more astounded than Monique herself. From making her way to Los Angeles in the 1950s, to leaving show business in the 80s, and of course the seven husbands along the way, Evelyn unspools a tale of ruthless ambition, unexpected friendship, and a great forbidden love. But as Evelyn's story nears its conclusion, it becomes clear that her life intersects with Monique's own in tragic and irreversible ways. So the plot twist of this book is incredible. The forbidden love in this book is incredible. The seven husbands in this book are incredible. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone because it is just pure magic. And I love this book. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid purely because of the fact that all of her books are like based on these characters that have had this like history and this past, and it's so incredible. Like, when I was reading this, I think a lot of people have said this, they just imagine like Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, it's just an incredible book. So I urge every single one of you to read it because I love this book so much. And I remember one night I came back from work and at 7 p.m. I got into bed and I finished reading this book. I was like halfway through it, not even, yeah, and I just read a massive chunk of it because I just couldn't put it down. And I remember I sobbed my eyes out at this book, but it was just incredible. So please read it because I love it. Next up is all the Heartstopper books. So I did actually read this one at the beginning of the year, and then in June I got the other three for my birthday. So I did read these all separately. However, I will just talk all about them in one go. You have the first one, which is obviously volume 1, boy meets boy, boys become friends, and then boys fall in love. So obviously in this one we meet Nick and Charlie, learn how they kind of meet and they get on and they start becoming friends and they start getting feelings for each other. The first book ends on a cliffhanger, which is very, very cute. And then we also come into volume 2, which is kind of like the beginning of their relationship, and Nick is trying to find out sort of who he is and kind of how he identifies himself. This also ends on a cliffhanger. Then we come to volume 3, which is literally their like entire relationship. In volume 3 they also whisk away to Paris for a school trip, I want to say. This is, you know, their relationship's starting to get a little bit kind of like more intimate now. And then we come to volume 4, which is the most recent one. They have like a beach trip and Charlie starts to suffer with a mental health illness and he gets really, really ill, and then Nick is obviously trying to comfort him and support him, but obviously being that young, they're still kind of trying to learn a little bit about themselves and their relationship and how to work it out. I believe Alice Oseman is going to be writing a volume 5 of the Heartstopper series. However, she has taken a break from writing. She posted an Instagram post not too long ago explaining how she's just been constantly working non-stop. Obviously with the making of the graphic novels and the making of the Heartstopper Netflix series, she's kind of been like go, 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 and she's become very ill from it, so she's taking a step back. And then obviously after I read the Heartstopper books, I read Nick and Charlie, and so it all ties in really, really nicely. But I think everybody knows about Heartstopper now, and I rated all of them 5 stars. Next up is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This was a 5-star read for me. So Verity is definitely very different to all of her other novels. So this is about Loan Ashley, who is a struggling writer on the brink of financial ruin when she accepts the job offer of a lifetime. Jeremy Crawford, husband of best-selling author Verity Crawford, has hired Loan to complete the remaining books in a successful series his injured wife is unable to finish. Lowen arrives at the Crawford home, ready to sort through years of Verity's notes and outlines, hoping to find enough material to get her started. What Lowen doesn't expect to uncover is in the chaotic office is an unfinished autobiography Verity never intended for anyone to read. Page after page of bone-chilling admissions, including Verity's recollection of the night her family was forever altered. Lowen decides to keep the manuscript hidden from Jeremy, knowing its contents could devastate the already grieving father. But as Lowen's feelings for Jeremy begin to intensify, she recognises all the ways she could benefit if he were to read his wife's words. After all, no matter how devoted Jeremy is to his injured wife, a truth this horrifying would make it impossible for him to continue loving her. The TikTok sensation with over 200,000 5-star reviews. So, but the reason it is 5 stars is because of how incredibly written it is. It's definitely very graphic. This is the warning that I always put on any Colleen Hoover book is, if you are new to the Colleen Hoover world, please, 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 please read the trigger warnings before you step into a Colleen Hoover book. I started reading Colleen Hoover's with It Ends With Us, and I wish I had read the trigger warnings beforehand. I love this book. It was so unbelievably twisted, intense and suspenseful, and my God, it was just mind-blowing. She's recently come out with the extended chapter, and so I would like to get my hands on it. However, I don't want to have a completely separate book to it, but I'm sure I'll figure out a way. But yeah, 5 stars, definitely recommend, especially if you are into like the kind of thriller mystery vibe. Next up is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Now, I was really excited to read this book actually, and I rated it 4 stars. I'm half French, as most of you guys probably know by now, and the reason I wanted to read this was purely because it was set in Paris, and Paris is my favourite city ever, so reading this made me feel very at home. This was very cleverly written actually. I really, really enjoyed it. So, a beautiful old apartment block deep in the back streets of Montmartre, where nothing goes unseen and everyone has a story to unlock. The watchful concierge, the second lover, the prying journalist, the naive student, the unwanted guest. There was a murder here last night. A mystery lies behind the door of apartment 3. Who holds the key? So, this plot twist was actually one of the best plot twists I've kind of like ever seen. I actually can't 100% remember what happened. I remember how things were found. I don't remember who done it, sort of thing. But it was very, very good, and I would recommend it. I've heard mixed reviews about this book, but I would still give it a go. As I said, I really enjoyed it, and I would probably actually definitely reread this. However, I've got about a million other books at my TBR at the moment, so this can wait. Next up is The Magpie Society 2 for Joy. So if you are unaware, this is actually a series created by Zoe Sugg and Amy McCulloch. Not 100% sure how you pronounce her surname. And I read the first one, which is One for Sorrow, I want to say last year now. When this came out, I was like, have to read it. Also, can we appreciate the naked hardback? It's got pretty magpies on it. The thing is, I can't really read you this one because it will give away, I think, the first book. Basically, it's set in a boarding school, and there's like this there's this magpie society that used to be a thing at the boarding school years and years and years and years and years ago, before these girls like became students there. They start to unravel the Magpie Society mystery, and so we kind of see that in the first book, and then there's a whole new mystery that occurs in this book, which also relates back to like the Magpie Society kind of conundrum, and so that's kind of the story. But it's really actually quite worth a read. I rated this 3 stars. I didn't love it as much as the first one, but I would still recommend it. I still really, really enjoyed it, and I will probably reread it. But yeah, definitely worth reading. I read books 2 and 3 in the A Series of Unfortunate Events series. It is my favourite series. I read the first one years and years ago, and then I got my hands on the entire series, and I'm slowly starting to read it. Like, if it's just a filler book, then I'll probably just read one of these because they're so easy to read. Book 2 is The Reptile Room, and book 3 is The Wide Window. I rated book 2 4 stars, book 1 5 stars, and book 3 3 stars. Gonna do these 2 books together because they go in a series alongside the other book that I read from this series. So as you guys know, I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan, and so when I found this author that had actually recreated some of her work using the same characters, obviously different stories, I was really eager to read them. And I think it was about October last year, I went on a ferry to France and I actually picked up The Killings of Kingfisher Hill by Sophie Hannah. And I was like, oh, at that time I wasn't so into my books, so I didn't really know anything about it. I just thought it was Agatha Christie. It wasn't, it was Sophie Hannah that had written them, obviously using Agatha Christie sort of characters, so Poirot. And I read the book right at the beginning of the year. It was okay actually, I didn't mind it, I was really quite invested in the story. And then I realised that she had three other books in the series. Turns out The Killings of Kingfisher Hill was the last in that series, and therefore there were 3 other books prior to that. So the first one was The Monogram Murders, then it's Closed Casket, and then it's The Mystery of Three Quarters, which I haven't read yet, but I started with Monogram Murders. I rated this one 4 stars. It was really good. I really enjoyed the story. So it's actually through Edward Catchpool's perspective, and then obviously we have Poirot investigating, and Catchpool works for Scotland Yard and therefore helps him with like all the murders and stuff. This happened in a hotel called Bloxham Hotel. Murderer would leave a cufflink placed in the victim's mouth, and so Poirot obviously tries to find out what happened. This was really good. And then recently I finished Closed Casket. This is actually my book that I just finished. I'm now reading the Atlas 6, but I read this prior to this. I rated this 2 stars. I really didn't enjoy it as much. I thought it was very wishy-washy, just didn't hold up to Agatha Christie standards. Obviously I know it's not Agatha Christie, it's Sophie Hannah, but yeah, it just didn't do as much for me as this one. Now, I mentioned this series in my recent book haul, so if you watch that then you'll know exactly what series I'm about to talk about. It is the Truly Devious series, ladies and gentlemen. I love this series so much. I love Stevie Bell, I love Janelle, I love every single character in this book series. So we begin with Truly Devious. We start to learn about all the characters, the setting. We start learning about the Ellingham case, which is the reason why Stevie Bell has attended this school. We then go to The Vanishing Stair. The Truly Devious first book actually ends on a cliffhanger, so it goes straight into The Vanishing Stair. She starts picking up a relationship and she starts to fall in love, and she starts to uncover more about the Ellingham case. We then come to The Hand on the Wall, which is obviously following on from the Ellingham case, and by the end of this book she has cracked open the case and she's a legend, and that is basically the trilogy of the Ellingham murders. We then come to The Box in the Woods, which is very highly tabbed, and this is a standalone. It's not part of the series, however it has the same characters. It's basically their summer break and they've been asked to go stay at a campsite where the Box murders happened in 1978, and so Stevie Bell cracks open the case. They were the books that I read this summer. They were that good. They were all 5 stars. Hello, this is a clip from future me. Basically, as I'm editing this video right now, I have just realised how long the video is. I had over an hour and a half worth of footage, and I just thought that nobody is going to sit through a 40-minute video. I'm nowhere near even done editing this video. So there's only a few books that I did miss out on this list. However, I'm going to leave a list of them down below, and I think the books that I've actually not shown, I've definitely done reviews for over on my Instagram. So if you would like to see my reviews on them and what I rated them, then please click the link in the bio. That will take you straight to my Instagram account, or you can also go over to my Goodreads and that will also tell you my rating. But I am so sorry for cutting the video shorter. It's just I didn't think anybody would want to sit through a 45-minute long video, so I'm very much going to cut out a good chunk of this video. But thank you so much for watching anyway, and back to Past Me. So guys, that was all the books that I read this year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, do not forget to smash the thumbs up button, subscribe down below, and don't forget to turn on the little post notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.